Analysis of dietary patterns in coronary artery disease. Various dietary patterns can be observed based on a few food consumption surveys done on the French population at a national level. A traditional dietary pattern follows the older French eating model and consists of a few of the following foods: processed meat, cheese, bread products, and red meat. There is a high consumption of dairy products such as cream, yogurt, and butter, and high consumption of alcoholic drinks, namely wine. These foods reflect French culinary culture, as there is a strong attachment for conviviality and pleasure of eating. There is low fiber intake with this diet, but it is high in fat, sugar, and salt. Part of France's cultural heritage is the gastronomic meal, which is a customary practice for celebrating significant events in the lives of individuals and groups. The Mediterranean dietary pattern consists of high consumption of fruits, vegetables, fish, and oil, and unprocessed foods. The health-conscious dietary pattern is characterized by low-fat or light foods, soups, fruits and vegetables, and wholemeal bread and multigrain bread. As you can see, there is high fiber intake with this dietary pattern, so it is more healthful than the traditional pattern. The sweet and processed dietary pattern consists of sweetened products, such as breakfast cereals, fruit juices, chocolate bars or confectionery, and dairy desserts. These are also meals for convenience, like puff pastries, quiches, warm sauces, and cereal-based mixed dishes. This pattern is characterized by high consumption of processed and modern foods. The snacker dietary pattern consists of takeaway products and processed foods. Like the traditional pattern, this diet is high in fat, sugar, and salt. France's food culture consists of a variety of different attitudes toward food, such as health awareness, indulgence, conviviality, convenience, and practicality. For the most recent survey done to assess the diet of the French adult population, it was found that contributors to carbohydrate, protein, and fat intakes came from croissant-like pastries, cakes, sweet biscuits, sandwiches, pizzas, and savory pies. Animal products, such as dairy, meat, fish, and eggs, account for 60% of protein intake. So there isn't much plant-based protein there. There was an increased consumption of processed foods, and consumption of processed foods accounts for a higher percentage of the French diet than before. Salt intakes were higher than nutritional objectives set by the French National Health and Nutrition Program. The main contributors for increased salt intake were bread and dried bread products, sandwiches, pizzas, and savory pastries. Fiber intake was low in comparison to the French Agency for Food, Environmental, and Occupational Health and Safety's recommendations, abbreviated as ANSES. Main sources of fiber were from fruits and vegetables and cereal products. The life expectancy may be longer, but many years of life after age 65 are spent with chronic disease or conditions. One such is coronary artery disease, abbreviated as CAD, also known as coronary heart disease or ischemic heart disease, and it is a leading cause of treatable mortality in France. Ischemic means that the organ, in this case the heart, is not receiving enough blood and oxygen. Coronary artery disease refers to heart problems caused by narrowed heart arteries that supply blood to the heart muscle. Narrowing can be caused by a blood clot or constriction of the blood vessel. It is most often caused by plaque buildup in the walls of coronary arteries. Plaque is made up of deposits of cholesterol in the artery. Over time, the inside of the arteries narrow, which will cause partial or total block of blood flow. This process is called atherosclerosis. Symptoms of CAD are angina or chest pain and discomfort. CAD can weaken the heart muscle over time, which may lead to heart failure, which is a serious condition where the heart cannot pump the way it should. Connections between diet and illness. Risk factors for CAD include being overweight or obesity, an unhealthy diet, lack of physical activity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, and smoking. Dietary risks include low fruit and vegetable intake and high sugar and salt consumption, which is observed in the following dietary patterns: traditional, sweet and processed, and snacker. There is a rise in obesity rates in France, and the main contributor is poor nutrition. Higher consumption of ultra-processed foods is associated with higher risk of coronary artery disease. Ultra-processed foods often have higher content of total fat, saturated fat, added sugar, and salt. Food groups that are primarily ultra-processed and consumed in Western-style diets are associated with increased risks. The traditional dietary pattern would fall under a Western-style diet. Foods that contain saturated fats raise the level of cholesterol in blood, which could lead to plaque buildup, and high levels of cholesterol increase the risk of heart disease. Saturated fats occur naturally in many foods. The majority come from animal sources, such as meat and dairy products, like butter and cheese. Globalization has introduced changes to the dietary profile of France. Ultra-processed foods dominate food supplies of high-income countries, which includes France. Palatable, inexpensive, and ready-to-consume food products are more prevalent. These food products are characteristically high in fat, sugar, and salt, and include biscuits, confectionery, cereal bars, carbonated and other sugary drinks, and more. The driving force shaping the global food system include transnational food manufacturing, retailing, and fast food service corporations. Businesses that are centered around profit and heavy promotion of ultra-processed foods. Furthermore, changes in lifestyle can also explain changes in dietary profile. As we have more urbanized societies, convenience is more valued. Suggestions I would have for better nutrition would build off of existing measures in the literature. For example, the ANSES, the French Agency for Food, Environmental, and Occupational Health and Safety, conducts an individual and national study on food consumption every 7 years to assess the dietary patterns of the French population. This is a tool for risk assessment and provides the overall picture of the dietary patterns of the population. It evaluates whether nutritional needs are met by observed consumption patterns, and it evaluates the health impact of public health measures. France developed a nutritional logo called the Nutri-Score food label that provides easy-to-understand information on the overall nutritional quality of food products. Its aim is to improve nutrition and combat rising rates of obesity. The implementation is on a voluntary basis. The suggestions I would make are to address risk factors such as high blood pressure and obesity, and to promote dietary guidelines via various forms of media to increase people's awareness. For example, this can take the form of infographics on social media or through broadcast news. I think it would be useful to develop an app to personalize someone's dietary needs based on their consumption patterns. It would be easily accessible on a day-to-day basis. Education on nutritional needs from an early age would also be implemented in the form of in-class instruction or school programs so that kids learn the healthy habits they need to carry on throughout their life. Since implementation of the nutritional logo, the Nutri-Score, isn't mandatory, I think it would be more helpful to the consumer if it were mandatory for producers and distributors to put the Nutri-Score label on their products. These are my references.